Welcome to River City Plus, the show after the show. And we had Alan Bliss on with us earlier from the Jacksonville Historical Society. And we were really doing a deep dive into why Jacksonville history matters. And we got to touch on it a little bit. But while we're here, why don't we just kind of retouch that a little bit? So why does Jacksonville history matter?
So, Rance, thanks a lot. And always a great question. You know, historians are always happy to riff about history. It's what we do. But really, every one of us ought to be a historian. Every one of us is a historian. And let me put in a plug a little bit for the field. History is not the past. The past is what happened in the past. That's one thing. And we don't change that. But history is how we make sense out of the past. And we're always figuring that out. And we're always making more sense out of it. And that's why Jacksonville is one of the, I think, the most interesting and exciting and complicated places in Florida, one of the most interesting places in the United States to pay attention to history. This is a big, sprawling, complicated city. It's got the largest population of any city in the state, over 1 million now, twice as large as the next nearest contender, which is Miami. It is by far the largest city in physical size in the state of Florida. It's the largest in the lower 48 states. It has more history, I argue, in its little finger than any other place in the state of Florida. And I say that with all due respect to our friends to the south in St. Augustine and to the north in Fernandina. Yes, they go way
There's
back.
There's a battle for history. Whose history is the oldest?
That's right. Well, Jacksonville is 200 years old, strictly speaking. So, okay, not as old as St. Augustine claims to be. Its founding millennium, they say, is 1565. But in the last 200 years in Jacksonville, more and more interesting things have happened than you can shake a stick at. And this city is different from any other place in the state. And it really is more complicated than any other place in the state because of this really jam-packed existence that it's had in 200 years. So the history of a place is how you make sense of the people and events of the past. And Jacksonville founded, or at least created with that name for the first time on June 15th in 1822. That's when a petition was signed to the then Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams, asking him to identify this place that the locals called Jacksonville for the first time as a customs port of entry. He didn't. That came along later.
Wait. Can we pump the brakes just really quick? So when I got here, I've only been here 8 years, and I knew Jacksonville, but all I kept hearing about was Calford. What is that correlation?
So Calford was the informal name of a place on the river pretty close to where we're sitting here at the studio. It was right about where Liberty Street meets the north bank of the river, and it's where cattle drivers used to swim or float their cattle across the river. That was the narrowest point on the river for miles in either direction. Made sense. And the old Kings Road that crossed from the Florida-Georgia border down the east coast had to cross the river someplace. There were no bridges, and so this was a place where cows were forded. You see the name in the old records alternatively as either Calford, one name, or the Cal Ford, 3 names.
Okay.
But it was just really this hot, dusty little hamlet, kind of perched on the north bank of the river. And that's all it was at the time that Florida became part of the United States for the first time in 1821. And then a year later, over 6 people in this local, St. Johns River Valley signed a petition wanting to name it Jacksonville. There's no evidence, by the way, that Andrew Jackson ever visited Jacksonville. We're pretty sure he never even came into the eastern part of the state. But think about it. The people who lived here a year before had been citizens of Spain. They were Spanish subjects of the Spanish king. And then the United States made this a territory, and the people of this area thought, man, we really should cloak ourselves with patriotism and sort of identify ourselves as part of this republic, the United States. So they named their little settlement after the closest thing there was to a military hero at the time, and that was Andrew Jackson.
Noted. All right, that tracks. Now, there's that aspect of things, but can we say Jacksonville really came to be after the fire?
Yeah. The Great Fire of May 3rd, 1901, I argue, is the single most significant incident in the arc of the city's 200 plus years of existence. And with this image here, we see people on the day of the fire fleeing. And you can see people are trying to escape from the advancing flames and smoke with their possessions, their household goods. There really was wholesale panic as the fire swept from west to east across the city. The consequences of the fire were devastating, it's true, but that's not really the main reason that I argue it was the most significant event in the city's history. If we advance to the next picture, we'll see here, this is evidence of one of the buildings. This is a church in the old downtown core that's on fire. You can see that it's a wooden structure, and that was typical of Jacksonville's buildings. How come? Because the easiest kind of construction methodology around here was timber. Northeast Florida, southeast Georgia, the main sort of climate and topography is pine flatwoods, and so pine timber was the easiest and most accessible construction material. That's what the city was built of, and guess what happens to pine when it gets caught on fire?
Kindling.
Yeah. So you saw buildings like this that had been intended to stand for generations going up in flames within a matter of hours. Here we have the then mayor of Jacksonville, J.E.D. Bowden, standing there the day after the fire, enjoying a stogie while he's surveying the remains of his city, hands in his pockets, and it's tantalizing to think about what's going through this man's mind, isn't it? As he's looking over the wreckage.
This is what I'm mayor of now.
Yeah, here's my city. I'm the mayor here. Right. And it's what happened after this moment that makes the fire so interesting. We saw a city that went through a compressed renaissance and rebuilding in just the 10 years or so after the fire. You saw new construction, but it wasn't just new building. Rance, what happened is that the fire and the aftermath and the Renaissance, it all happened at a moment when construction technology was changing and new innovative architects were excited about new design practices and electricity, elevators, automobiles, telephones. All of this fit in with the Renaissance, and Jacksonville became a blank slate, a blank canvas, where smart, innovative, creative developers and architects and engineers could do cool things for the first time. And they had a long runway to do that. And so the downtown Jacksonville that we live in and commute through and work in these days, it's a product of that really compressed 10 years or so right after the fire.
So whatever tragedy it was, it actually gave the opportunity for Jacksonville to really become the city that it has evolved into now.
Yeah, it's testimony, isn't it, to the old saying, it's an ill wind that blows no good, right?
I've never heard it, but I will take it.
All right. Well,
it makes sense. So, yeah.
Take it from me, that's an old saying, and I don't recommend using it too often. But in this case, it really matters. And, I mean, it really is true. So, but one of the complicating things is that downtown Jacksonville grew at a moment when people did not fully appreciate how important the automobile was going to be. And that's why it's hard to find a place to park sometimes in downtown Jacksonville.
Yeah, atrocious. And looking at this infrastructure there before, like what they were, what year is this if we were... This image right here.
This image here is taken probably in the late 1940s, early 1950s. And I'd like the viewers to notice all the piers along the riverbank. This picture is taken from over the south bank looking to the north bank. That's the Main Street Bridge crossing the river right there. Pretty new at the time, but you see that the geography of downtown used to be dependent on the seaport, and the seaport was the north bank of the riverfront. So ships would come all the way upriver from the ocean, and then tugboats and docking pilots would nudge them into those piers and slips along the north bank. Almost all of that is gone now, but to service those ships, there had to be rail cars that moved through downtown and blocked traffic. It really became very, very complicated. And that's why the geography of the city and the port changed in the 19-teens. The port began to move around the corner into the area that's now called Talleyrand. And then by the 1960s, the Jacksonville Port Authority was established, and it started looking for more facilities. By the 1980s, it moved out to Blount Island. But think about this. Jacksonville is a seaport city. It's about 1/3 of our political economy rests on the fact that we are a seaport, a Navy town and a major seaport. And most of that has become invisible to a lot of the citizens of Jacksonville. We don't see Navy ships coming and going in our day-to-day work, most of us. We don't see the big cargo carriers, the automobile carriers, the container ships. Unless you're driving across the Dames Point Bridge and you leave a little space between you and the car in front of you and look over, you notice it then. But really, it's vital to this city, and it used to be part of the fabric of downtown. So the city has gone through incredible changes, but it still is connected to the river. It's still connected to the ocean. That really is elemental to our character, and it's one of the things that makes us different, even from the other seaport cities like Tampa.
And you mentioned earlier about how complicated the city is, and I mean, how complicated it has been as it's grown. Is some of that because of the evolution with the technology, and then just all of the different cultures that have moved in over the decades?
Good point. And there again, the fact that this is a seaport city helps account for the fact that it is complicated demographically. This is a place that people have emigrated to, Rance, from all over the world, from Europe, from Africa, from throughout the Caribbean, all up and down the east coast of the United States, the maritime provinces of Canada, from the Bahamas. This is demographically a complicated place. And I think that's another thing that's kind of invisible to most people. I think people who don't know Jacksonville and have never lived here kind of tend to think of it as being kind of, one-dimensional and maybe a little bit uncomplicated. Maybe in some ways, I think people size it up from a distance as being kind of backward, not very sophisticated. But when you live here, you've been here, 7, 8, 9 years, right?
Going on 9.
Yeah. Once you start to get acquainted with this place, you look around and think, man, oh man, there is a lot going on here. And there are a lot of people from a lot of different places. And I talk to these people in my job. I do a lot of public speaking. And I meet people who have come here, and every one of them kind of registers the same reaction. They're surprised.
When I first got here, I'm not going to lie, I was just like, okay, Jacksonville, and this is interesting. And they were basically, here's a camera, here's a car, go discover Jacksonville. And for me, I really appreciate what this opportunity I've been given through this job, because I've gotten to learn so much about the city, and the fact that people that have lived here for a long, long time, a lot of times they kind of get stuck living in their pocket. And what we get the opportunity to do with this show is go out and it's like, all right, so you live in this section of the town. Hey, have you considered going over here or this? And then with the history that goes with it, you get all of these different demographics and stuff. And you're like, these nuggets, I didn't know that happened here. Like the whole Calford thing, had no idea where the name originated from and what that was about. And so you get to appreciate the complications, I guess is the best way to put it. I love it here, and for the transplants that are moving here, you definitely need to plug in. Now I want to pivot, and the Jacksonville Historical Society is turning 95. What does that mean for you guys, that you guys have been able to be here as long as you have, to establish that link to history and share that? And also, is that the Jacksonville History Center?
Yeah, so our organization was founded on the anniversary of the Great Fire in 1929, and when you think about the people who founded it, there were over 200 charter members of the organization. They were diverse racially and in terms of gender and demographics. Our initial charter membership is kind of a complicated cross-section of the city at the time. But in the years since then, the Historical Society existed as a pretty small nonprofit, and just within about the past decade or so, we have tried to elevate not just our professionalism, but our outreach and our connection with the community. And we are rebranding ourselves as the Jacksonville History Center. How come? Because the word society seems to connote something that's a little on the exclusive side, like a club, right? Yeah. It should only be a bunch of people who care about, whatever aspect of the past that they are particularly interested in. That's not what we're about. It's not what we've ever really been about. And it's important for for us, for the people of Jacksonville, to know that we are the Jacksonville History Center. We aim to and strive and work hard to be inclusive, to collect and share the stories of all people, of all backgrounds, and all experiences. We try to be broadly inclusive about storytelling. We collect and preserve the stories of this complicated place, and man, oh man, it's job security, because there is an endless avalanche
There's
of
layers
stories.
upon layers.
Oh, yeah, and it keeps tumbling out. We have a growing oral history interview collection, and we try to interview people from all different stratas and backgrounds and socioeconomic perspectives and education and job experiences, people who are multi-generation natives and people who just arrived a year ago. It doesn't matter. If you're here, Jacksonville is your city, and you're a part of the city, and your story matters.
He is big on that, people. So if people like, do you guys have a brick and mortar?
We do. So we actually have two campuses downtown, one on the east side of the ViStar Veterans Memorial Arena, one on the west side. On the east side, we have Old St. Andrew's Church, where we have our monthly speaker series programs. It's right next to the baseball grounds. And we have a museum house next to that actually used to be the family home of James Merrill. He was the president of what was Jacksonville's largest industrial employer, Merrill Stevens Shipbuilding. On the west side of the arena is where my office and our archives are. It's in the old St. Luke's Hospital building, an 1878 building, first building built in Florida to be a hospital. And on that same campus is a three-story factory building built in 1920, and we are renovating that as a $3.3 million project into what will be museum and exhibition space on the ground floor, performance and event venue on the second floor, and a state-of-the-art modern archive on the third floor. Nice. It's a major project, but it's way past time that Jacksonville had a place where people can really go to research the history of this great city. Our research collection is devoted entirely to Jacksonville, and there's nothing else like it anywhere.
So are you guys up for volunteers and donations?
Oh, heck yes.
Hit them with the bright spot.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Rance. And yeah, we depend heavily on people who take an interest in our work and who engage themselves. We have lots of volunteer opportunities for events, programming, research, archives, writing, and we really are grateful to people who have Jacksonville-related material in their personal collections. When people wonder, what's going to happen to this? What's anybody going to do with this? Is anybody interested or caring about this? And every once in a while, I feel like I'm the luckiest guy in Jacksonville because I have the best job in this city. I get to meet people who care about Jacksonville and have an interest, and they've got a story to tell, or they've got artifacts or mementos to share, and that really matters to us. If you have something that you're kind of scratching your head about and you're wondering whether it belongs in a Jacksonville collection, please get in touch with us through our website, www.jackshistory.org. And Rance, you were talking about getting in a car with a camera and exploring this city, and the name of this program, River City Live, really fits well with that. This is a big city, yeah, but it's a city of neighborhoods, and every one of those neighborhoods has its own identity. The river is the thing that connects us all in this city and connects this city to the rest of the world. In a way, though, the river kind of divides us as well, because you can only cross it at certain points, certain bridges, and there are 7 of them in Duval County, and we have an image, I think, that we can take a look at in a moment.
Up there.
Yeah, let's take a look at the image of. There was one just before that we saw of the Dames Point of the Main Street Bridge, but yeah, there we go. That's the bridge that was built in 1941 in the downtown core. Then if we can advance to the next one that shows the ship in front of the Matthews Bridge. There we go. That's the John Matthews Bridge under construction. You can see that the connection is just about to be made complete. So that tells us that the year is 1952 when the bridge was finished. And you can see then a big ocean-going cargo ship that's moving upriver, and that's way upriver there, coming around Commodore's Point and headed toward the downtown docks, even as recently as the 1950s. But that kind of tells the story, doesn't it, to watch that bridge just about to make the connection between the downtown area, which would be out of sight to the left of this image, and the view to the right shows the bridge descending into the area that's known as Arlington, Old Arlington. And it was that bridge that really turned on the lights and made Arlington what it is today. It made it possible for that area to, if you'll pardon the pun, kind of catch fire, right? And it really grew into one of the most important neighborhoods in Jacksonville, and it grew lightning fast in the 1950s and 1960s. And there again, timing matters. Arlington grew as a mid-century modern community at a time when that architectural style was really popular. So that's why now when you drive through Arlington, you see buildings that kind of have this unique and distinctive architectural style. The people of Arlington are now, I think, becoming really engaged with their architectural heritage and the history, and we've been really happy to be able to work with them in advocating for the preservation of things like the Arlington Federal Savings and Loan Building on University Avenue, right across from the Old Town and Country Shopping Center, and the Unitarian Universalist Church, designed by Jacksonville architect Bob Broward and now a National Register Historic Landmark.
So we're going to connect with Alan again and the History Center, Jacksonville History Center. And I think we should reconnect and hit on some stuff on as many neighborhoods. I mean, there's so many, but we'll do some on some of the neighborhoods in the near future. You good with that?
That is a dynamite idea. Every neighborhood has a great story to tell, so let's do that.
All right, we're going to be telling that story here on River City Plus, where we have time to really do a deep dive into the conversation. So, Alan, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for those history nuggets, and we'll be talking again real soon.
Rance, thanks to you.
You're very welcome. So make sure you tune in tomorrow for more River City Plus, and at 9:30 for River City Live.